So free agency started almost a week ago, and Caleb Martin is still a free agent, which begs the question, what does this mean? Well, it means that I'm definitely surprised because Caleb Martin is a dog. He is one of the coldest role players of all time. I remember the first time I knew Caleb was that guy. It was a game back in 2021. It was in Miami, I remember, versus the Milwaukee Bucks. There was no Jimmy Butler. And if y'all remember, that's the game where Caleb Martin absolutely took over and nearly single-handedly beat the Bucks. I remember Max Strus had a pretty great explosion in that fourth quarter too. I think Caleb finished with like 28 points that game. I remember where I was at, actually. Quick little anecdote. I was in the parking lot of an ale house eating while watching the game because I had drove my girl to this country dancing place like 40 minutes away. And y'all know your boy doesn't do the country dancing. I'll go with her sometimes to be a good boyfriend, but that specific day, I wanted to watch Heat vs. Bucks, and I didn't feel like dropping her off and then going back home. So I went to the ale house across the street, and boy, am I glad, because that is a game that I will never forget for the rest of my life. Because Caleb Martin showed me that he is tough. And that was just a regular season game. We can go to the countless playoff games he had. Remember the game versus Milwaukee? What was that, game 4 where the Heat came back to beat them? And Caleb hit a dagger corner 3 on Giannis and put the hand in his face to say, "You can't guard me." Technically, it was a toe on the line. It was a 2. We know toe on the line, Caleb Martin is basically Michael Jordan. So he has that going for him too. Of course, we can fast forward to last year's Eastern Conference Finals where Caleb Martin probably should have won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I mean, almost 20 points a night, but he shot like 60% from the field, like 49% from 3, something crazy like that. You can even go to just this past season that just finished against the Boston Celtics. Obviously, every time the Heat were in Boston, they were booing him like crazy. Just 20,000 people raining boos on him. And Caleb Martin, he those boos fed his energy, and he just dominated those games that he was in Boston. And to do that in that kind of crowd on that stage, that shows that Caleb Martin is truly a big-time player. So all that being said, that's why I'm very surprised that he's still unsigned. Him and Haywood Highsmith, actually, who we'll kind of get into a little bit throughout this video. But basically kind of a rundown on the free agency season for Caleb. It has not been a good one. It all started where he opted out of the final year of his contract with the Miami Heat. That was only for $7.1 million. Not a surprising move because we all expected Caleb Martin to get more, right? That's why Heat fans were kind of mad we didn't trade him during the season because we all assumed we were going to lose him for nothing, but maybe not. I mean, there was a point after he opted out where the Heat were willing to give him an offer. I think I saw Ethan Skolnick said they were able to give him $12 million. Or maybe that's if Caleb opted in and then they could give him $12 million next year. The rules of the CBA are crazy. And they even said on the new 5 on the Floor episode today that the only person in the league who understands it is Andy Ellisberg. So we're all kind of trying to figure out this new CBA together because it's wild. But essentially, he did offer Caleb a contract of about $12 million, and his camp declined it because they thought that they could get more money. Well, here we are a week later, and Caleb Martin is still unsigned, and the market is drying up, which is becoming a bit of a concern for Caleb Martin. You might have a bit of a Dennis Schroeder scenario. If y'all remember a few years ago, I think Schroeder turned down like a 4-year, $70 million deal, something crazy like that, because his agent said, no, you can get more. And he ended up signing with like a minimum for the Lakers or the Celtics. He's bounced around a ton, but anytime a agent screws over with one of their players like that, it'll probably be known as a Dennis Schroeder. Because as you look right now where things stand, this was an excellent graphic put out by our guy Yossi Goslin, who actually is a cap expert. I'm gonna zoom in on the graphic here, but he posted it 3 days ago, but updated it at the time of this recording and said the only thing that changed here is the Orlando Magic no longer have cap space because they signed Jonathan Isaac, Gary Harris, obviously Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and they re-signed a bunch of other guys. So if you look at the rest of these teams, the only teams that currently have cap space that could potentially sign Caleb Martin is the Utah Jazz, Pistons, Spurs, Sixers, Hornets, and the OKC Thunder. Now, kind of what I've been saying for Caleb Martin is a team that I think would value him is a contender. So obviously, the really only contenders you have here is the 76ers and the Thunder, although the Sixers have never been out of the second round in like Joel Embiid's tenure and the trust the process tank tenure. But I'm sure they still think they're contenders, even though they signed a playoff choker P. But that's besides the point. They are a team that has been rumored to be interested in Caleb Martin, as well as, I guess, Haywood Highsmith also. Haywood obviously played for them before, so I could see them wanting Highsmith also. But they could definitely use Caleb Martin, I think. Right now, that 76ers team only has 8 players, so I do think they are a real threat to sign him. OKC, I think, could use Caleb because Caleb does have some of that experience. You know, he's been to an NBA Finals, so he does have a little bit of experience for those younger guys, although he still is young himself. But I don't think fit-wise is as great because OKC has a lot of other decent perimeter defenders like Cason Wallace, Kendrick Williams, and obviously they got Lou Dort, Alex Caruso. So I don't think there's as much of a fit for Caleb on OKC. And as far as the rest of these teams, I mean, why would the Pistons or Jazz or Spurs want Caleb? I think those are more potential suitors for Tyler Hero. Obviously, that's something that we've talked about before. In yesterday's video, I had a trade that I think would help the Heat a lot, where they can clear cap space to get DeMar DeRozan and Trae Young. And in that trade, I had Hero going to the Pistons for a first-round pick because none of the Pistons guards can shoot. They just drafted Ron Holland, paired him with Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey. I think the Pistons can use a Tyler Hero. Plus, Hero's a lot younger. Can they use a Caleb Martin? Probably not as much. But obviously, these are just the teams that could sign Caleb outright or Haywood Highsmith outright. But there can also be a sign-in trade. Obviously, that would include really almost any of the other teams that might want Caleb Martin. I think that's a more likely scenario, unless Caleb goes to the Sixers. But just because Caleb is a guy that I think contenders might see as a piece that can sort of put them over the top. He's not going to take a bad team and make them good, but I think he can be a nice ancillary piece on a team that's trying to win a chip. Fortunately, most of those teams are over the cap, so they would have to do a sign and trade, in which maybe the Heat can get back a second-round pick or something like that. Well, I guess those teams would also have to send over equal salary in return, right? And then if that's the case, I don't think the Heat could do that because they can't take salary back. So maybe sign and trade is not as possible, but maybe it is, and we can get some picks. Just because a lot of people that were mad we didn't trade Caleb during the season, I said, well, hey, maybe we can get some picks back in the offseason, kind of like the Heat did with Max Strus last year. I think they got a second-round pick in the offseason. So it's not like we definitely lost Caleb Martin for nothing. That still remains to be seen kind of what we do with him. There was a rumor that went out yesterday about a double sign-and trade where the Bulls signed DeMar, we signed Caleb and flip him. One, I don't even think that's allowed by the CBA. I saw Brian Goins said that on Twitter today. Two, we already know the Chicago Bulls don't want to take on long-term money because they're a team that is actually over the salary cap. They're almost at that first apron, not quite there. But why would they want to be even close to that for a team that they know is going to suck and likely trying to rebuild? So the Bulls are trying to open cap space, not take on more money. But if this comes down to how I think it might be, Caleb Martin has got to be pissed at his agent because he's probably going to end up signing for a lot less than he thought he should. I'd love Caleb Martin back on the Miami Heat, but if you look at our current salary cap situation here, if you look at the top right, we are $5 million over the first apron and only $5 million under the second apron. And if you're not familiar with the aprons, with a second one, you basically want to avoid at all costs. There's all kinds of penalties, including your first round pick being put in the end of the first round, regardless of where you are. So if the Heat are a second apron team and they suck and they end up having to pick in 15, well, now that pick is at the end of the first round. And that's if you're a second apron team for multiple years, like 3 out of 7 years. The rules are very complex, but they're bad. I can tell you that. I did a whole video explaining it more. It's the video on my channel. If you search the Boston Celtics are screwed, I explained more in that video because the Celtics essentially, I didn't think they could keep up this their core for that long, but they did just re-sign Tatum and Derek White to 4-year deals. So it looks like they're going to bite the bullet for the second apron, which would be a real good experiment to see if a team can be successful with that, because there is all kinds of penalties that I explained in that video, so you can check it out there. But yeah, the Miami Heat are $5 million on the second apron, so I would take Caleb Martin back, but it would have to be for less than that. Haywood Highsmith, I would have loved him back too. Before free agency started, I think that he could have kept Caleb if they could have got him around $7 million. I thought that would have been doable. Caleb, I thought was going to go for closer to $15 million. Obviously, that's not looking like the case. But either way now, they can't even afford $7 million for either one of those guys because, of course, they just signed Alec Burks, and he took about, $2 million of that money. That's why they only have about $5.5 million before getting without going over that second apron, which the Heat, they will do. They will avoid that second apron. I know I said I would, but I can guarantee you they want to also. So they will not be signing anyone else over that $5.5 million unless they create some cap space by offloading Tyler Hero, which I firmly believe at this point, Hero will not be on the roster to start next season, especially after those tweets that he liked, which I talked about in a couple videos ago, where Hero liked a tweet saying, "Free Tyler Hero from this toxic fan base at Miami Heat." That is as clear as you can get requesting a trade publicly, in my opinion. So I don't think Tyler Hero will be here. Unfortunately, I think the holdup we're seeing is nobody wants Tyler Hero because he's looked at as a negative asset. So I think they're having a hard time offloading him, meaning they can't create the salary cap space, meaning Caleb Martin is still sitting out there in free agency with Haywood, Highsmith. But I would love to keep Caleb Martin or Haywood, one of the two, really, just because you're losing a lot of perimeter defense, point of attack. If you're losing both of those guys all offseason, I said I'd be okay losing them because you have DeLon Wright. But I didn't expect them to lose DeLon Wright for $3 million to the Milwaukee Bucks either. So really, if you're talking about guard depth now, as far as defensively, Bam is probably your best perimeter defender. Obviously, Jimmy as well. But outside of those two, outside of your two stars, who do you got? Terry was okay. He's better than I thought people expected, but that's not his game. Tyler is obviously not great. Duncan was improved, but not great. The only other guy you got is Jay Rich. He's not as good as he used to be. He actually wasn't great last year defensively, but he did have some injury concerns. I think he can kind of get back to what we saw with young Jay Rich because he was a good point of attack defender, but that's it. So I do think you definitely need to keep either Haywood or Caleb just for their abilities on that end of the ball. The Heat do have Zion Pullen, the two-way guy. We'll see him in Summer League in a couple days. I really like his point of attack defense. He kind of reminds me of a Gabe Vincent, but you can't rely on a two-way for your perimeter defense. I probably would rather keep Caleb over Haywood if I had to pick, just because he's the more experienced guy, better offensive player, more versatile, and the Heat team struggled scoring as it is. So I'd want to just keep all the best scorers if possible. But regardless, all this stuff being said, something does seem to be weird with the way the offseason is playing out with Caleb and Haywood Highsmith, but more so Caleb because we thought he'd be gone quicker. Does that mean that some other moves are in the works for the Miami Heat? Does that mean that they're waiting to offload Tyler Hero to maybe move a few other pieces around and keep Caleb Martin? We'll see. But what I will say is I have a strong belief in things that I've heard and also just my personal opinion myself. I do think Tyler Hero is off this team by the start of next season. But that's all I got to say for this video. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments below. Just yesterday, I dropped my song called Don't Run It Back. It's doing very well. People are liking it a lot. So go check it out if you haven't already. I greatly, greatly appreciate the support. Make sure to like the video and subscribe because we're less than 200 subs away. Actually, we're almost we're like 120 subs away from 5K, which is awesome. Could have never imagined in my wildest dreams we'd hit such a great milestone. So if you are watching this, hit that sub button. Help me chase the dream. And I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.
Pull up in the city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.